Admiral Zektar stared at the tactical display aboard the Hegemony Dreadnought Void's Embrace, his four eyes tracking the blue that represented the third planet of this unremarkable yellow star. Earth, the locals called it, a primitive world that had barely managed to escape its own gravity well, yet had somehow caught the attention of three different galactic powers in the span of 2 solar cycles. "Sir, we're detecting debris fields at coordinates 77 Mark 12, reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Crix. The young Hegemony officer's tentacles quivered with nervousness as he delivered the report. The composition matches that of consortium battle cruisers. Zektar's mandibles clicked in thought. The consortium fleet had arrived 6 months ago with 47 vessels, declaring their intention to claim Earth for its rare mineral deposits and conveniently placed location along several trade routes. Standard procedure for dealing with primitive civilizations. Yet their entire armada had simply vanished 3 weeks into their operation. What about the Dominion forces? Zektar asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Gone, sir. We found scattered hull fragments near the 4th planet. Molecular analysis confirms they belong to Dominion heavy destroyers. No survivors, no distress signals, no indication of what destroyed them. The silence on the bridge was thick enough to cut with a plasma cutter. 58 Dominion warships, each capable of reducing a planet's surface to glass, had met the same mysterious fate as the consortium forces. And now the Hegemony had sent their own fleet to investigate, despite the obvious dangers. Captain Vorthak approached from the communication station, his massive frame casting a shadow over the tactical display. Admiral, we've intercepted human transmissions. They appear to be discussing something they call Tuesday morning coffee. The translation matrix is struggling with the context. Zektar almost laughed. While 2 of the galaxy's most powerful military forces had been mysteriously eliminated, the humans were concerned about their morning beverages. The intelligence reports had painted them as barely sentient creatures who had only recently developed faster-than-light communication. Their space presence consisted of a few research stations and mining operations that used technology so primitive it was almost quaint. "Sir, incoming transmission from Earth," announced the communications officer. "It's on an open channel, broadcasting in several languages, including Standard Galactic. Put it through." A hologram materialized in the center of the bridge, showing a human female with dark hair and wearing what appeared to be a simple blue uniform. She looked remarkably calm for a member of a species facing annihilation. "This is Director Sarachun of the United Earth Defense Coordination. I am transmitting this message to the Hegemony fleet currently approaching our solar system. We are aware of your arrival and your probable intentions regarding our planet." Zektar leaned forward. The human's voice was steady, showing no fear. Either they were incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. "We know you are investigating the disappearance of the consortium and Dominion fleets. We understand your concern and confusion. These incidents were not the result of hidden weapons or secret alliances with other galactic powers. They were, however, necessary defensive actions taken by our species." The bridge erupted in chittering, clicking, and hissing as various crew members expressed their disbelief. "Humans, defensive actions? Against battle fleets that could crack planets? We do not wish conflict with your people," Director Chin continued. "However, we cannot allow the systematic exploitation or destruction of our world and our people. If you choose to proceed with hostile intentions, you will face the same response as your predecessors. This is not a threat. It is a statement of fact." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Zektar found himself staring at the tactical display where Earth continued its peaceful rotation, looking as harmless as it had moments before. "Admiral," whispered Captain Vorthak, "surely this is some kind of elaborate deception. Humans couldn't possibly have destroyed those fleets. Our intelligence indicates they barely have functional space travel." Zektar studied the debris patterns on his screen. The consortium and Dominion hadn't just been defeated, they had been utterly obliterated. No survivors, no escape pods, Nothing but scattered atoms and the occasional intact hull fragment. Whatever had done this possessed power beyond anything in the hegemony's arsenal. Maintain position, he ordered finally. Begin deep scans of the system. I want to know everything about these humans and their capabilities. And keep our weapons powered but not targeted until we understand what we're dealing with. We proceed with extreme caution. As his crew scrambled to follow orders, Zektar couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial about Earth and its inhabitants. Dr. Elena Vasquez adjusted her coffee cup as she watched the holographic display showing the hegemony fleet holding position just outside Mars orbit. The aliens had been there for 2 days now, conducting what appeared to be intensive scans of the entire solar system. She almost felt sorry for them. "Ma'am, we're receiving data requests on 17 different frequencies," reported Technician Martinez from his console at the Jupiter Station Monitoring Center. "They're trying to map our communication networks, power distribution, and what they probably think are our military installations." Elena smiled. Let them scan. They would find exactly what Earth wanted them to find. A collection of research stations, mining operations, and scientific outposts that appeared to be staffed by species that had barely mastered fusion power. The real infrastructure was hidden in ways that even the most advanced alien scanners couldn't detect. "Any response to our invitation for diplomatic contact?" she asked. "Negative. They seem to be maintaining a cautious distance while gathering intelligence." Elena understood their hesitation. In their position, she would be doing exactly the same thing. 2 massive alien fleets had entered this system with conquest in mind and had simply ceased to exist. Now, the hegemony was trying to figure out how a primitive species had accomplished what should have been impossible. The answer was both simpler and more complex than they could imagine. "Dr. Vasquez," came a voice from the quantum communication array. "We're receiving a priority transmission from Director Chun on Luna Base." "Put her through." Sarah Chen's image appeared, her expression serious but composed. "Elena, how are our guests behaving? Like scientists and soldiers should. They're being careful and methodical. They've been scanning everything for 48 hours straight. I estimate they'll attempt direct contact within the next 12 hours. Good. Are the concealment protocols holding?" "Perfectly. To their sensors, we're exactly what we appear to be, a Type 0 civilization that recently developed interplanetary travel. They can't detect the quantum mesh network, the dimensional storage facilities, or any of the real infrastructure." Sarah nodded. The concealment technology wasn't alien. It was entirely human, developed over the past century using principles that other species had somehow never discovered. While the galaxy's great powers had focused on bigger weapons and faster ships, humanity had learned to hide in plain sight. "What's the status of the cleanup operations?" Elena asked. "Complete. The last of the Dominion debris has been processed. The quantum disruptors worked exactly as predicted. Complete molecular dissolution with no trace signatures. The attacking fleets literally ceased to exist at the subatomic level." Elena remembered the day the consortium had first arrived. The aliens had sent a standard ultimatum demanding humanity's immediate surrender and the beginning of systematic resource extraction. Director Chin's response had been polite but firm: "Leave peacefully or be removed." The consortium had chosen violence. It had lasted exactly 47 seconds. The quantum disruptor network that surrounded Earth's solar system was invisible to conventional sensors and completely undetectable until activated. When the consortium fleet had moved to attack, every ship had simply dissolved into component atoms simultaneously. No weapons fire, no explosions, no battle, just instant complete annihilation. The Dominion had arrived 2 months later, apparently convinced they could succeed where the consortium had failed. They had lasted 31 seconds. "Dr. Vasquez, we have an incoming transmission from the Hegemony flagship," announced Technician Martinez. "It's directed specifically at Jupiter Station." "Interesting. Put it through." A new hologram materialized, a towering alien with 4 arms and scales that seemed to shimmer in the artificial light. "Admiral Zektar, according to the identification protocols in the transmission. I am Admiral Zektar of the Hegemony Third Fleet. I request permission to speak with the human authorities responsible for this system's defense. Elena glanced at Sarah's image, who nodded almost imperceptibly. This is Dr. Elena Vasquez, Director of Deep Space Research for the Jupiter System. I have authorization to speak on behalf of the United Earth Defense Coordination. How may we assist you, Admiral? The alien's expression was difficult to read, but his tone suggested carefully controlled curiosity mixed with wariness. Dr. Vasquez, I will speak plainly. Our scans indicate that your species possesses technology that should be impossible given your apparent development level. We have found evidence of 2 destroyed fleets, yet our instruments detect no weapon systems capable of such destruction. That's correct, Admiral. We have no weapon systems. The alien's 4 eyes narrowed. Then, how do you explain the complete destruction of 97 military vessels? Elena sipped her coffee thoughtfully. Admiral, may I ask why your fleet is here? We came to investigate the disappearances and to determine if Earth poses a threat to galactic stability. And what were your intentions if you determined we were a threat? The silence stretched for several seconds. Finally, Zektar replied, standard hegemony protocol for dealing with hostile primitive species. Elena nodded. Orbital bombardment, followed by systematic resource extraction. Yes, we're familiar with the protocol. It's the same one used by the Consortium and the Dominion. You seem remarkably well-informed for a primitive species. Admiral, I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about what humanity represents. We're not a primitive species that somehow stumbled onto powerful weapons. We're simply a species that developed along a different technological path than the rest of the galaxy. She gestured to Martinez, who began transmitting a carefully prepared data package. We're sending you some basic information about human development and our approach to technology. You'll find it illuminating as the data flowed across space. Elena wondered how the Admiral would react to learning that humanity had been listening to galactic communications for over 2 centuries and had been preparing for this day long before aliens knew Earth existed. Admiral Zektar stared at the data streaming across his personal display, his 4 hands gripping the edges of his command chair until his knuckles showed white beneath his scales. What he was reading challenged everything the hegemony understood about technological development and galactic civilization. Sir, Lieutenant Crix said hesitantly, the translation matrix is having difficulty with some of these concepts. The humans appear to describe technology that manipulates reality at the quantum level, but the mathematical frameworks they're using are completely unfamiliar. Captain Vorthak leaned over the Admiral's shoulder, his massive frame casting shadows across the holographic displays. This can't be accurate. They claim to have been monitoring galactic communications for 200 years. Our intelligence reports show they only achieved faster-than-light communication 15 years ago. Zektar continued reading, his understanding of the situation shifting with each piece of information. According to the human data, Earth had detected the first galactic transmissions in the early 22nd century using primitive radio telescopes. Instead of attempting to make contact, they had spent the next 2 centuries learning galactic languages, studying alien technology, and developing countermeasures. The humans had known about the hegemony, the Consortium, and the Dominion longer than some species had been members of those organizations. Admiral, came a voice from the communication station. We're receiving another transmission from Jupiter Station. Dr. Vasquez appeared again, her expression sympathetic. Admiral, I can imagine this information is difficult to process. Would you like me to explain our historical perspective? Zektar found his voice. Please do. I am particularly interested in how a species that appears to have primitive space travel has somehow mastered quantum manipulation technology. It's simple misdirection, Admiral. What your scanners detect, as our space infrastructure, is exactly what we want you to see. Our real capabilities are hidden using quantum phase shifting that makes them exist slightly outside normal space-time. Your sensors literally cannot detect them because they're looking in the wrong dimensional framework. The bridge fell silent except for the soft humming of life support systems. Zektar felt a chill run down his spine as the implications became clear. "You've been hiding your true capabilities from the galaxy," he stated. "Correct. We learned early in our monitoring period that the standard galactic response to new species involves either subjugation or destruction, depending on perceived threat levels. We chose a third option, remaining hidden until we were contacted directly. And the fleets that came here, the Consortium and Dominion." Dr. Vasquez's expression hardened slightly. "Both arrived with the intention of enslaving or eliminating our species. Both were given the opportunity to leave peacefully. Both chose violence. Both were removed from existence." Zektar's tactical training kicked in despite his shock. What kind of weapons could completely destroy entire fleets without leaving conventional debris? "We don't use weapons in the traditional sense, Admiral. Our defense systems work by convincing matter to stop existing in this reality. It's based on quantum uncertainty principles. At the subatomic level, particles constantly flicker in and out of existence. We simply convince the particles that made up the attacking ships to flicker out and not return." The science officer, a brilliant hegemony physicist named Dr. Yorth, suddenly spoke up. "That's theoretically possible, but the energy requirements would be astronomical. You would need to generate power equivalent to a small star. Actually, it requires very little power. The quantum vacuum provides all the energy we need. We just redirect it." Captain Vorthak's confusion was evident in his voice. "If you possess such advanced technology, why maintain the deception? Why not reveal yourselves to the galaxy?" Dr. Vasquez was quiet for a moment. Then, her image was joined by another human, Director Chun from the earlier transmission. "Because, Captain," Director Chun said, "the galaxy isn't ready for us. We've been monitoring galactic civilization for centuries. We've watched species rise and fall, empires conquer and crumble, and we've seen how the established powers treat anyone who threatens their dominance." She gestured to something off-screen, and a new holographic display appeared showing a star map of the galaxy. "The hegemony controls 12,000 systems through military might and economic manipulation. The Consortium enslaves entire populations to work their mining operations. The Dominion has committed genocide against 47 species that refuse to surrender their homeworlds." Zektar felt his stomach sink. The human intelligence was disturbingly accurate. "So we made a choice," Director Chin continued. "We would develop our civilization in secret, protect our world and our people, and only reveal ourselves when absolutely necessary for our defense. But your species could revolutionize galactic civilization," Dr. Yurth protested. "Your quantum technology could solve energy crises. Your medical advances could eliminate disease across hundreds of worlds. Our technology in the hands of the current galactic powers will be used for conquest and control." Dr. Vasquez interrupted. "We've run the calculations. If we revealed ourselves today, within a decade, there would be hegemony quantum weapons aimed at every independent world, Consortium quantum mining operations stripping entire systems, and Dominion quantum surveillance networks monitoring every citizen in the galaxy." Admiral Zektar sat back in his chair, overwhelmed by the scope of what he was learning. Humanity wasn't just another species to be cataloged and managed. They were potentially the most advanced civilization in the galaxy, hiding behind a carefully maintained facade of primitive technology. "What do you want from us?" he asked finally. Director Chun smiled, and for the first time, Zektar noticed it didn't reach her eyes. "We want you to leave our system, Admiral. We want you to report back to the hegemony that Earth is a primitive world protected by unknown defensive systems of presumably alien origin. We want to be left alone to develop our civilization in peace. And if the hegemony decides you represent too great a threat," the human smile disappeared entirely. "Then, the hegemony will discover that 2 fleets was just the beginning." The hegemony high command chamber on Nexus Prime buzzed with tension as Admiral Zektar finished his report. The massive circular amphitheater, carved from living crystal and filled with representatives from dozens of species, had fallen completely silent. Even the usually chattering hive mind delegates had ceased their constant whispers. Supreme Commander Thaxkar, a towering reptilian whose ancestors had conquered half the galaxy, leaned forward in his ceremonial throne. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. Let me understand this correctly, Admiral. You believe that these humans, a species we classified as barely spacefaring, somehow eliminated nearly 100 of our most advanced warships using technology that operates outside known physics. Zektar stood straight, his dress uniform immaculate despite the 3-week journey from Earth. That is correct, Supreme Commander. I brought complete sensor logs, communication recordings, and detailed analysis from our science teams. The evidence is conclusive. Defense Minister Kral 9, representing the militant wing of the Hegemony Council, slammed a massive fist onto his podium. This is preposterous. You expect us to believe that primitives have mastered quantum manipulation while our greatest scientists struggle with basic dimensional theory. With respect, Minister, I've seen the debris fields. I've analyzed the molecular dissolution patterns. I've spoken directly with the humans responsible. They didn't just defeat our fleets, they erased them from existence. The chamber erupted in cacophony as delegates from different species began arguing in dozens of languages. Some demanded immediate mobilization of the entire hegemony fleet. Others suggested negotiating with humanity for access to their technology. A few wise voices called for caution and further investigation. Supreme Commander Thaxkar raised one massive arm, and silence returned. Admiral, you spoke with these humans directly. What is your assessment of their intentions? Zektar had been dreading this question for the entire journey home. Supreme Commander, they want to be left alone. They have no interest in galactic politics, no territorial ambitions beyond their own solar system, and no desire to interfere with hegemony operations. They simply want to develop their civilization in peace. And you believe them? I believe they have the power to enforce their wishes, regardless of what we decide to do. Fleet Admiral Vorthax stepped forward from the military section. Supreme Commander, we cannot allow this precedent to stand. If word spreads that a single primitive world defeated 3 separate invasion fleets, every subject species in the galaxy will begin to think rebellion is possible. The humans aren't a subject species, Zektar replied. They were never conquered because we didn't know they existed as a technological civilization. They've been developing independently for centuries. Strategic analyst Kik Sarah, one of the few non-military voices on the council, spoke up. The real question is whether we can afford to make an enemy of this species. Admiral, in your professional opinion, what would happen if we sent our entire battle fleet to Earth? Zektar had run those calculations during the long journey home, using every piece of data he had collected. We would lose completely and catastrophically. The humans demonstrated they can eliminate entire fleets instantaneously without using detectable weapons. Our largest armadas would simply cease to exist. Impossible, growled Defense Minister Kral 9. No single world could withstand the full might of the hegemony. We command the resources of 12,000 systems, and the humans command technology that makes our numbers irrelevant. They've spent 2 centuries studying our capabilities and developing countermeasures. They know exactly how we fight, how we think, and how to defeat us. Supreme Commander Thaxkar was silent for long minutes, his ancient eyes studying the holographic displays showing Earth's solar system. Finally, he spoke. What did these humans offer in exchange for being left alone? Nothing, Supreme Commander. They made no offers and no threats beyond the implicit one that attacking them would result in destruction. They simply stated their position and waited for our response. No trade agreements? No technology sharing? No tribute. They seem to have no interest in galactic commerce or politics. Their entire civilization appears focused inward on developing their own society and technology. Intelligence Director Zoyaxoth emerged from the shadows where his species preferred to conduct business. Admiral, Did you gain any insight into the scope of their capabilities? You've described their defensive systems, but what about their overall technological level? Sektar hesitated. This was the part of his report that would likely cause the most alarm. Based on casual observations and offhand comments from human personnel, I believe their publicly visible infrastructure represents less than 1% of their actual capabilities. They mentioned offhandedly that they monitor communications from over 2 million species across the galaxy, maintain deep space sensor networks we cannot detect, and have defense installations that exist in parallel dimensions. The silence that followed was deafening. Representatives who had been demanding immediate military action now looked pale and shaken. 2 million species, whispered Fleet Admiral Vorthak. The entire galactic community only knows of about 50,000 spacefaring civilizations. The humans have apparently been cataloging and monitoring galactic civilization far longer and more thoroughly than any of us realized. Supreme Commander Thaxkar stood slowly, his massive frame dominating the chamber. The council will recess for deliberations. Admiral Zektar, you are commended for your thorough investigation and discretion in handling first contact with this unusual civilization. As delegates began filing out, many clustering in small groups to discuss the implications of the report, Defense Minister Kralnine approached Zektar directly. Admiral, surely you don't believe we should simply accept this situation. The hegemony has never backed down from any challenge. Zektar met the minister's gaze steadily. Minister, I've spent my entire career serving the hegemony's military. I understand the importance of projecting strength. But I also understand the difference between a challenge and suicide. Attacking Earth wouldn't be a military campaign. It would be mass extinction. You're suggesting we abandon thousands of years of expansion and conquest because one small world has some advanced technology? I'm suggesting we learn to coexist with a species that could eliminate us from existence, but chooses not to as long as we don't threaten them. That seems like wisdom, not weakness. As the minister stalked away, clearly unsatisfied with that answer, Zektar wondered whether wisdom would prevail in the hegemony's final decision. 6 months after Admiral Zektar's report to the hegemony high command, Director Sarah Chun stood in the observation deck of Luna Base, watching Earth rotate peacefully below. The blue and white marble looked exactly the same as it had before first contact with galactic civilization, but everything had changed. Ma'am, we're receiving the quarterly status report from our Deep Space Monitoring Network. Announced Communications, Officer Park. All galactic powers are maintaining the agreed-upon boundaries. No hostile movements detected. Sarah nodded, unsurprised but relieved. The hegemony's final decision had been pragmatic, if not entirely satisfactory, to their military leadership. After weeks of heated debate, they had chosen to classify Earth as a protected anomaly, a world under the protection of unknown advanced aliens, not to be approached without explicit permission. The fiction suited both sides perfectly. The hegemony could maintain their reputation by claiming Earth was protected by mysterious powerful beings rather than admitting they had been outmaneuvered by a supposedly primitive species. Humanity could continue developing in secret while maintaining the illusion that they were under someone else's protection. Any response from the consortium or Dominion? Sarah asked. Both organizations have accepted the hegemony's classification and established quarantine protocols for this system. The consortium seems particularly eager to avoid any confrontation with whoever destroyed their fleets. Dr. Elena Vasquez materialized via hologram from Jupiter Station, her expression thoughtful. Sarah, we need to discuss the long-term implications of our current position. We've successfully established our security for now, but we can't remain isolated forever. Sarah turned from the viewport. What are you thinking? We're monitoring over 2 million spacefaring civilizations, but we're only interacting with the 3 most aggressive ones. There are thousands of species out there who are struggling under hegemony occupation, consortium exploitation, or dominion oppression. Some of them are developing technology that could eventually threaten galactic stability. You're suggesting we expand our role? I'm suggesting we consider selective intervention, not as conquerors or rulers, but as guardians. We have the capability to protect developing civilizations from the predatory powers, to guide technological development away from destructive paths, to ensure that the galaxy develops toward cooperation rather than eternal conquest. Sarah had been expecting this conversation. Humanity's isolation had always been intended as a temporary measure, a way to develop safely until they were ready to engage with galactic civilization on their own terms. The question was whether they were ready now. The Council of Colonies has been debating this exact issue, Sarah admitted. The Mars delegation is pushing for a more active role, while the Titan research stations want to continue pure isolation until we understand galactic politics better. What about Earth's opinion? Divided. The European Union wants to focus on exploration and scientific advancement. The African Federation is concerned about repeating historical patterns of cultural disruption. The Asian Cooperative is advocating for gradual, careful engagement. Dr. Vasquez's image flickered as quantum interference from a nearby research experiment briefly disrupted the communication. Sarah, we intercepted something yesterday that might influence the debate. The hegemony is planning to subjugate the Kythera system next month. 12 billion sapient beings who developed agriculture only 3,000 years ago. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. This was exactly the kind of situation that made isolation feel like moral cowardice. Do we have intelligence on their technological level? Early industrial, roughly equivalent to Earth in the 19th century. No space travel, no radio, no knowledge that galactic civilization exists. The hegemony considers them perfect for integration into their agricultural production network. Slavery. Effectively, yes. 12 billion people who will spend the rest of their lives producing food for hegemony worlds. Sarah stared out at Earth again, thinking about the billions of humans living peaceful, free lives because their species had been strong enough to defend themselves. The Kythera wouldn't be so fortunate. Elena, what would intervention look like? Could we protect them without revealing ourselves? Absolutely. We could establish the same kind of unknown protector scenario we created here. Anonymous defensive systems that prevent hegemony ships from entering their system. No direct contact, no cultural contamination, just a protective barrier. And when the next species is threatened, and the next, then we protect them too. Sarah, we have the power to end the cycle of conquest and exploitation that has defined galactic civilization for millennia. The question is whether we have the moral courage to use it. Before Sarah could respond, Communications Officer Park spoke up urgently. Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Zektar's ship. It's on a heavily encrypted channel we didn't know the hegemony possessed. Sarah and Elena exchanged glances. Put it through. Admiral Zektar appeared, but he looked different than during their previous communications. Older, more tired, and surrounded by what appeared to be a small, trusted group of officers. Director Chun, Dr. Vasquez, I apologize for the irregular communication, but I believe we need to discuss a matter of mutual concern. Go ahead, Admiral. There are elements within the hegemony who refuse to accept the current situation. Defense Minister Crowl9 has been building support for what he calls a definitive solution to the Earth problem. He believes that deploying our entire military, including experimental weapons, will be sufficient to overcome your defenses. Sarah felt ice in her veins. When? Soon. Possibly within days. I wanted to warn you because I believe such an attack would be catastrophic for both our peoples. Your defensive response would likely eliminate not just the attacking fleet, but potentially destabilize our entire government structure. Elena leaned forward. Admiral, why are you warning us? This goes against your own military's interests. Zektar's expression was grim. Because I've spent my entire career believing the hegemony represented order and stability in the galaxy. Your existence has forced me to confront the reality that we represent conquest and oppression. I cannot be part of an action that will result in the unnecessary death of millions of my people in service of maintaining that system. Sarah made her decision in that moment. Isolation was no longer an option. The galaxy was forcing humanity to choose between hiding while billions suffered or stepping forward to create something better. Admiral, we appreciate your warning. In return, let me offer you something to take back to your superiors. Humanity is prepared to take a more active role in galactic affairs. We will no longer limit ourselves to passive defense. What does that mean? Sarah looked at Elena, who nodded understanding. It means, Admiral, that any force which launches an attack against Earth will discover that we can project our defensive capabilities far beyond our own solar system. It means that species threatened by galactic predators will find themselves under the same kind of protection that Earth enjoys. It means the age of conquest is ending. Admiral Zektar was quiet for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. Director Chun, I believe that may be exactly what the galaxy needs. As the communication ended, Sarah turned to Elena. Contact the Council of Colonies. Tell them the debate is over. Humanity is going public.